For years, people who tried to leave Windows hit the same wall. They installed Linux, they got comfortable, and then one program killed the whole experiment. Photoshop would not run. Microsoft Office would not run. That one obscure tool they had used at work for 10 years would not run. The translation software everyone recommended, a project called Wine, has been trying to solve this since 1993, and after more than 3 decades of work by close to 2,000 contributors, it still cannot run the Adobe suite. It still chokes on Office. The wall held. Now a free and open source tool has appeared that runs Photoshop on Linux. It runs Lightroom, it runs FL Studio, Affinity Photo, Microsoft Word, and Office 365. It runs that obscure program from your old job. Users have even run SolidWorks on it for months at a time. And the developers pulled this off with a trick so simple it is almost funny. The tool is called Windimbo. Here is the trick. Windimbo does not translate Windows programs into something Linux understands. It does not imitate Windows. It does not pretend to be Windows. It quietly downloads a real copy of Windows 11 directly from Microsoft servers, installs it inside a sealed container on your machine, and then projects each Windows program onto your Linux desktop as its own ordinary window. You click an icon. Photoshop opens. You move it, resize it, and work in it next to your Linux programs. Underneath, a complete copy of Windows is running in the background, doing what it has always done. The compatibility is nearly total for one blunt reason: nothing is being translated. The program believes it is running on Windows because it is. And here's the part that makes this a problem for a trillion-dollar company. That copy of Windows running in the container is the free trial download. It is never activated. Nobody in this arrangement buys a license. Microsoft publishes the installation file on its own servers, Microsoft allows it to run unactivated, and Windimbo simply connects those two facts for you. The company that spent 30 years making sure you needed Windows now hands over the one ingredient that lets you stop paying for it. To understand why this matters, you have to understand why the old approach kept falling short. Wine works by intercepting the requests a Windows program makes and rewriting them, live, into requests Linux can answer. It is one of the most ambitious volunteer software projects ever attempted, and for games, it has been a genuine triumph. Valve built its Proton system on top of Wine, and that system is the reason the Steam Deck exists. In January of 2026, the project shipped Wine 11, a major release with years of accumulated improvements. But translation has a ceiling. A modern professional application makes thousands of demands that are welded deep into Windows itself. Adobe apps, Office, licensing systems, copy protection. Rewrite one call wrong and the program crashes or never starts. So the answer to "can I run my program" was always the same. Maybe check a compatibility database, hunt for missing libraries, tweak settings for hours. One user described getting a single work application running by chasing library errors one at a time until it mostly worked. That was the success story. Windimbo looked at 30 years of that struggle and refused to play. Do not translate the demands. Supply the real Windows underneath and let it answer them itself. The honest history is that pieces of this idea existed before, and the people who built them have the scars to prove it. VirtualBox offered a seamless window mode as far back as 2009. More recently, a project called WinApps wired together the same core ingredients, a virtualized Windows plus a remote display protocol, but demanded that you assemble most of it yourself by hand in a terminal. And doing it manually was miserable. One user who built this setup himself just to run desktop Outlook and a PDF reader described 6 months of fighting graphical glitches, leftover artifacts from closed windows, and a mouse cursor that lost focus in ways he could not predict, before he scrapped the whole machine and called it a waste of time. That was the state of the art. Windimbo took that intimidating pile of parts and wrapped it in a setup wizard. It fetches the Windows installer for you. It installs it for you. It builds the app list for you. Install a program inside the container and its icon simply appears in your launcher, ready to open on your Linux desktop. The idea is old. The version a normal person can actually use is new, and the results are hard to argue with. Users report the entire Adobe Creative Cloud installing and running. Affinity Photo works. FL Studio runs as if nothing unusual is happening. Office 365 signs in and behaves. One tester spent several months running SolidWorks, one of the most demanding professional engineering programs in existence, and reported that outside of heavy graphics, work nothing serious broke. A related project called Lin Office uses the same underlying technique specifically to deliver Microsoft Office on Linux. The wall that stood since 1993 did not get climbed. It got bypassed. Now for what the glossy summaries leave out, because you deserve the full picture before you touch this thing. First, Windimbo is in beta. It has not reached version 1.0. The developers say plainly that you should expect hiccups and bugs, that you should be comfortable troubleshooting, and that the current version is not the final product. That is refreshing honesty from a software project, and you should take it at face value. Second, there is no graphics card acceleration yet. Photo editing works, documents work, music production works, but video editors like Premiere Pro get laggy, and gaming through Windimbo is pointless. Games with kernel-level anti-cheat will not run here either, for the same reasons they refuse to run everywhere outside a bare Windows install. Third, the display layer is not flawless. The window projection runs through a tool called FreeRDP, and users report occasional rough edges, especially with programs that spawn secondary windows and on setups with more than one monitor. It is dramatically better than the hand-built versions of this idea, but it is a remote display protocol doing a job it was never originally designed for, and once in a while, you will notice. Fourth, the setup has one genuinely hard step. Windimbo depends on a container system called Docker and on FreeRDP, and installing those means following instructions carefully, possibly in a terminal. The tool checks every requirement for you and links you to guides for each one. Follow them exactly, do not improvise, and it works. But this is the moment where a rushed user gives up. Fifth, plan your hardware honestly. You are keeping a second operating system alive in the background. Sensible starting numbers are 2 processor cores, 4 gigabytes of memory, and at least 32 gigabytes of disk space, and more is better for creative work. Never hand over more than half of what your machine has. Never hand over more than half of what your machine has. And know that if you let the container start automatically when your computer boots, that memory is spoken for even while you are doing nothing. Users have already traced mysteriously high idle memory usage straight back to this. The fix is simple. Turn off Start on Boot and launch the container only when you actually need it. So what does this mean for you, sitting on a Windows 10 machine that Microsoft has spent the last year trying to shove toward the recycling bin? It means the last excuse is dying. The single most common reason people gave for staying on Windows was one irreplaceable program. Not the operating system. Nobody loves the operating system. One program. Windimbo exists precisely for that program. You move your daily life to Linux, where the telemetry, the forced updates, and the advertising baked into the start menu simply do not exist. And you keep one small container on standby for the stubborn holdout. You open it when you need it. You close it when you are done. Windows goes from being your landlord to being a tool in a drawer. It also means the trap has an exit even for cautious people. You do not have to commit. Install Linux, install Windimbo, and if the experiment fails, you have lost nothing but an afternoon. The people who tested this and stayed did not stay because someone lectured them about freedom. They stayed because the one thing holding them hostage stopped holding. If you are seriously weighing that move, the Windows Escape Kit linked in the description is a complete step-by-step guide to migrating from Windows to Linux Mint, written for people who have never touched Linux before. If this video saved you a future headache, subscribing is the easiest way to catch what this tool becomes as it matures. Step back and look at what actually happened here. Microsoft spent 3 decades building a moat of software exclusivity. That moat is why businesses paid, why families paid, why you paid. A small open source team working on a beta project that has not even reached version 1 found a way to hand every Linux user the contents of that moat using an installation file Microsoft itself provides at a price of exactly nothing. It is not finished. It is not perfect. The graphics limitation is real and the beta label is earned. But the direction is unmistakable, and the developers are shipping improvements constantly. The question was never whether Linux would get good enough. It has been good enough for years. The question was whether that one last program would ever stop holding people hostage. Here is what I want to know from you. What is the one Windows program that has kept you or someone you know from switching? Name it in the comments, because the answer to that question is now, in most cases, yes, it runs. The people who said the wall would never fall were not wrong about the wall. They just never imagined someone would stop trying to break through it and simply walk around.